with my husband in the Caribbean, and he came to visit us. He was consulting with the government of Barbados. So he's been working around the world trying to restore coral reefs. And as I understood it in those days, and I knew this in Barbados as well, that people who needed money would dynamite the reefs. And this was a wonderful way to employ them to start planting what he called the coral gardens. And now we hear about those kind of projects around the world, but it was new to me in those days. So he's spent many years giving workshops on this around the Pacific and in the Caribbean. He's been married for 43 years or longer, and he has children and grandchildren of so many ethnic backgrounds. They live in Fiji and Hawaii and Japan and Canada, and Austin came from Wilmington, North Carolina. That's how we got acquainted. He also has a permaculture farm where he's teaching sustainable agriculture, how to grow food, and also chickens, because he'll talk to us about the supply of fish and how that's related to growing chickens. His NGO in Fiji is called Corals for Conservation, and it works on coral restoration, reef management, and then also this permaculture, and chickens come under that umbrella. He's won many awards, and he's been documented by BBC TV 3 times. He's won a National Geographic Award, the Changemakers Award, not Roya, never mind, Janet, who knows very much about Changemakers. So I think here, I do want to mention his wife, Kim, and they have pioneered in the South Pacific, Guam, Caroline Islands, and Fiji, and then they were for 6 years in Puerto Rico while he was getting his doctorate, I believe. So I don't want to take any more time, but if you want to learn more about him, go to the invitation that we sent out, and you'll see some links to more about his work. Austin, thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much, Winnie and Dawn. And it's an honor to be here. I'm sorry about the chickens. They'll be crowing a lot. It's not quite dawn here yet. It's just after 5 in the morning in Fiji. So maybe the sky back here will get some light during the time that I'm talking. Anyway, so yeah, I've known Winnie for a long time, and there are people on here. I've got a former Professor Curtis here from Maryland, and he was one of my, there are lots of people. Oscar, Winnie's husband. These are people that I've looked up to. We need these kind of people. And I've looked up to Arthur, I've looked up to so many people. And as a young person, and we need these people that we can admire and strive to be more like. And I just thank all of you. So anyway,
thank you.
Anyway, it's kind of emotional for me. So anyway, so when I became a Baha'i, and this is to the Baha'i audience, and so this is mostly Baha'i. So sorry about that, guys, if you're not a Baha'i, but this is my perspective, is that I became a Baha'i when I was 17, and I had dyslexia, and I had various problems like all young people have. And when I read the Baha'i writings, it empowered me. It empowered me because it said every young person has to have a trade or a profession. And the purpose of your life is service. You have to make the world a better place. So what's the point of joining something if it doesn't transform you and it doesn't? So I became a Baha'i, and we're world citizens. We have to get out there and make our worth known. We basically make something out of our life, and we have all this potential that we need to fulfill because this world has so many needs. And so as a young person, I was very fortunate to find the Baha'i community because it is so pointed in the right direction of world citizenship, equality of men and women, and all these multicultural harmony and race unity, all these things that the world needs. And so it really transformed me. So that's the beginning. So I'm going to basically share my screen now and start the presentation. If I can do that. Okay. So, yeah, here we are.
Yeah,
okay.
So Austin, let me just ask people, if you aren't muted, if you could just mute yourself while he's going through his presentation. And, you know, if you'd like to make a comment, you could make a comment in the chat area. But I think, Austin, you'd probably like to have just questions at the end. Is that
right? Yeah, there'll be time for questions. And I don't know if people have to leave in the middle or something, you're busy, but, you know, I tend to be long worded, but you said 45 minutes or something like that. And so hold your questions till the end, and I'll try not to get distracted and sidetracked. Okay. That's why PowerPoints are great, because it holds my attention. I also have this attention deficit problem where I'm always trying to do too many things. Every time I'm always generating these new projects and before other ones are finished. And so I've had this problem all the time, struggling with, but anyway, it's been effective. I've got a lot of good stuff going on, and you'll see that. Okay, so you have to work with yourself and what you have. We have limitations, but those limitations are actually sometimes strengths at the same time. So basically, my title is Island Communities, Coral Reefs, and Climate Change, Reinventing the World to Turn the Tide. We have to reinvent this world, or we will drown, we will die. Okay, so we are in the biggest crisis ever in history. Now, how do I can't turn the page. Okay, okay, there we go. And it'll probably turn too many pages because I pushed the button twice. Okay, so here we are. This is our home. This is the planet Earth. And we're all one country, and it's very clear to see from outer space that we are one unit. We have to start working together, but our systems that govern this Earth are all divisive, and we have wars, and we have all this waste of energy, and it's just really difficult. So we have these challenges, and we're trying. How can we function? How can we be productive in this disunited world? Because if we don't find unity, we're going to be toast. And so this is from Baha'u'llah, you know, the founder of the Baha'i faith, that he says that every man of discernment while walking upon the earth feeleth indeed abashed, inasmuch as he is fully aware that the thing which is the source of his prosperity, his wealth, his might, his exaltation, his advancement and power, is the very earth which is trodden beneath the feet of all men. There can be no doubt that whoever is cognizant of this truth is cleansed and sanctified from all pride, arrogance, and vainglory. Okay, so the whole thing of pride, arrogance, vainglory, where you somehow think that you are the generator of your wealth, and that somehow you are endowed with, you know, because of your race or because of your nation, that somehow you have the right to have an easy life, and somehow that you're endowed with that. That really, if you look at the planet Earth, we realize that every single bit of our prosperity comes from this planet Earth, and we are all in the same boat, or in the same thing. So, so people have forgotten. Obviously, they're not humble. They've become quite arrogant. They've quite self-centered, and so forth. So we have now, the Earth has a fever. So this planet that we're part of, we are not separated from this planet. We are part of the planet. The planet has a fever, and it's called climate change. And so you'll see that the red areas here are areas that are way too hot, and the blue areas are cooler than usual. And why are the blue areas there? It's because of the melting of the ice. So everything is hotter, and then the surface, as the ice melts, it basically absorbs a lot of heat. So you can see that we have a big problem. So the records began in 1880, and the heat is being exceeded again and again and again every year. And so if you look at the carbon dioxide, this is what's responsible. You probably already know about this, but this shows, I made this talk originally in 2018, and this was the statistics I could find from then. And it's gone on. So there was 380 parts per million was the carbon dioxide, and now it's over 420. You can see the new stats are just really concerning. So some people think that we've made progress because we've got the Paris Accord or the Kyoto Protocol or whatever. We have made absolutely no progress at all, okay? Every year we produce more than the year before, and it's not, we're accelerating at the rate, where the rate of change is accelerating. It's not slowing, not even slowing down, and it's very far from stopping. So, so I was really surprised and happy that the chairman or the president, whatever, of the UN, what's his name? Antonio Guterres. Yeah, I think that's where he actually came on and said, "You are all lying. All of you nations, you've agreed to change. You've agreed to stop producing so much CO2, and you're all lying." And so, and it's true. We're lying to ourselves. We're lying to each other, and we have to change. Okay. So it's irrefutable that the earth is warming. And you can see, you know, every year is hotter. We're kind of in a little plateau right now, but it's super hot. I hope we're in a La Nina year. The La Nina is supposed to be where, yeah, it's not going to show, but when El Nino comes back, it's going to go so much higher. So this plateau is related to La Nina conditions, which it looks like 3 years, it's going to be a 3-year La Nina, which is really amazing, which is good. But even though it's La Nina, we have corals that are bleaching. What happens in the ocean is when the ocean gets too warm, the corals lose their algae, you know, another algae thing. And so when the corals are actually a combination plant animal, and they get most of their energy from photosynthesis. And there's an algae inside there, a brown algae, which is in partnership with the coral polyp. And this beautiful relationship of animal and plant creates this beautiful system of a coral reef. And when the water gets too hot, the algae and the coral, which were in balance, no longer are in balance. And the algae, instead of producing sugar and oxygen for the coral, it produces hydrogen peroxide, because the photosynthesis reaction starts breaking. It breaks down, and hydrogen peroxide burns the coral, and the coral expels the algae, and that's called bleaching. So coral bleaching, you can learn more about it if you're interested, but basically the corals turn white, and they go on, many of them go on to starve to death and die. So it's, I tell people it's like a marriage between the coral and the algae. They have a beautiful marriage. So the algae gives, oh, here's sugar and some oxygen, honey. Oh, thank you. Here's some good nutrients for you, and I'll give you a home and shelter. And so it's a beautiful relationship. But when the environment becomes too hot, it breaks the relationship, where instead of giving sugar, the algae gives hydrogen peroxide, and no more oxygen and no more sugar, hydrogen peroxide, and it burns the polyp, and he kicks her out. It's a divorce. It's horrible. So it's really horrible. The bonds of love between those organisms are broken because of this hot water. Okay, and so this shows, the top graph shows the melting of the sea. I've just I've gone too far. It shows the melting of the ice caps. So you can see Greenland is the purple line, and the blue line is Antarctica. So Greenland, most of the water, a lot of the water is Greenland is more important right now. It's the melting of Greenland is happening very rapidly, and the oceans are rising. So this is the graph showing the global mean sea level change. And this is a very new graph. I just found it online. I had to update what I had on here before. And and it looks like it's over 5 millimeters a year now, half a centimeter it's coming up. So the acceleration in the rise in sea level is suddenly turning a point. You know how you have the hockey stick, you know how it starts to turn? Well, it looks like it's at a critical turning point right now, where we may see just incredible rise in sea level. And this is really, really important for the Pacific Islands, because our very future depends upon having the seas not come up and drown all of our atolls and so forth. So this is very, very serious. This is very, very real. Okay, this is the old graph that I had from 2018. You know, that 6.6 feet for the year 2000, that was the extreme. Now they're saying that the 6.6 feet may be conservative, or it may be point right on. So what they thought was the low end, the 1 foot, it's just not going to happen. Okay. The 4 feet, if we're really lucky, will be limited to 4 feet increase in sea level by the year 2100. Okay. And more likely it's going to be 2 meters, over 2 meters. So this is very serious. Okay. We're talking about big economic impacts, big impacts to communities all over the world, Bangladesh and okay. So this is Florida. You guys are in the United States, most of you, many of you. So I decided to put Florida on the map. So 1 degree centigrade is, we're already above 1 degree centigrade. So the dark blue areas here around Miami, when the ocean reaches equilibrium, it will be underwater. I mean, so we've already gone beyond that. Okay, we've already gone to 1.2 or 1.3. So those dark blue areas, there's nothing we can do. That dark blue area is going to come. Lake Okeechobee won't quite be, but it looks like we're going to be 2 degrees for sure. And it looks now that we're going to be 2.3 to 2.6 or maybe 3.2. They're discussing now. It looks like we may be actually close to 3 degrees warmer by the year 2100, in which case all that blue stuff is basically, just about all of it is getting, it's really bad. This is so bad, guys. So, and it's not just talk. This is something that we actually see the data coming in. Remember, I told you it's this turn is happening in the graph. The turn is happening, and we're getting into a new phase of sea level rise. On the positive side, maybe this will actually mean something to people. Maybe they'll see it happening when the streets of Miami start flooding. Maybe people will freak out and start trying to do stuff, but will it be too late? Because the ocean takes, 100 years before it really reaches equilibrium. So it may be too late. Okay, so here this atoll, which has on the island to the on the southwest side, on the extreme lower left, that's a village down there. And this island in Tuvalu, this atoll will be gone if it comes up 2 meters. So by the year 2100, these people will probably have to leave. So this is a grave threat to our region. Okay, in Kiribati, this picture is in Kiribati where my friends live, and the ocean comes up and those coconut trees get shocked by the seawater. And yeah, they can take some seawater, but not a shock like this. So the sea level comes up during king tides, and coconut trees, all the vegetation is dying. This has huge impacts on the community. So these marine heat waves are increasing. The oceans are getting warmer, and more we see the bleaching of the corals, and then the corals starve. Remember, this divorce happens, the algae leave, they get kicked out, and the corals die. And so our farm is the buildings on this little peninsula on the left, the lower left. That's our farm during the flood in our valley. This is our Singatoka River Valley. And this happens, it used to happen every 15 or 20 years. Now this happens about every 5 years. We get these big floods, and there are people that live there whose houses are neighbors. We have to help evacuate people. We bring their things up to the farm. We try to, it's just really difficult. And there's very little aid that comes to the people when they're damaged. So people have lost so much. These are poor people, and they can't really afford to lose it, but it's happening. So these are impacts. We live among the people. I think we're that, they call us Europeans because we are Europeans. We came from Europe. You guys, we stole a continent called North America, but we're actually Europeans. And we're the only Europeans in the entire interior of Fiji, or at least this region. I think maybe the entire interior. So we are living among the people and trying to do something. And we're seeing the impacts, and we're fortunate we live on a hill. Okay, then we have the strongest cyclones ever in the history have hit Fiji. In 2016, Winston hit, and Cyclone Pam hit Vanuatu. And this has huge impacts on communities when they aren't very rich, they aren't very prosperous, they're living off the land. They live off of sweet potatoes or cassava and the fish they catch. And here comes a cyclone and wipes out their entire source of food. Okay, but people are amazing. Look at the people's faces. I mean, seriously, this is resilience. People share, they help each other, and they have traditions where they know certain food sources they can get and so forth. So they don't starve to death, but they are resilient people. And I'm just really amazed how resilient they are. These are the meek people who will inherit, that Jesus said will inherit the earth. No matter what happens to you guys in North America or Europe, these people in the South Pacific, they're going to survive because they are amazing. They're so meek, pure, and they still have a connection to the land. Okay, so this is from Baha'u'llah as well, from the 1800s. The winds of despair are alas blowing from every direction, and the strife that divides and afflicts the human race is daily increasing. The signs of impending convulsions and chaos can now be discerned, inasmuch as the prevailing order appears to be lamentably defective. As a youth of 17, I read this and I said, yeah, exactly. Okay, there was a Vietnam War going on. And so Baha'u'llah talked about a chain of events, momentous and possibly catastrophic in their nature. He talked about the turn of the century, of the year 2000. He talked about that turn of the century. He talked about world peace being inevitable, but as the result of a series of convulsions and a series of grave difficulties, that we have hope. We know that peace is coming. We know that what we do to create a new world will actually be effective. Okay, and he talked about the Ashoka Effendi, his grandson, reading the writing, said, it talked about cancerous materialism, born originally in Europe, carried to excess in the North American continent, contaminating the Asiatic peoples and nations, spreading its ominous tentacles to the borders of Africa, and now invading its very heart, which Baha'u'llah unequivocally and in emphatic language denounced in his writings, comparing the cancerous materialism to a devouring flame and regarding it as the chief factor in precipitating the dire ordeals and world-shaking crises that might necessarily involve the burning of cities, the spread of terror, and the consternation of the hearts of men. So this cancerous materialism is the root cause of climate change. It's the root cause of the wars. It's the root cause of so much of our problems, basically. So it's a devouring flame. Okay. Oh, I went the wrong way. Okay. Okay, so now just briefly, I'm just going to look at the injustices that we have. Okay, this shows that this was 1% of the population in 2015 own half of the global wealth. And by 2030, up to 70% of the global wealth will be owned by that 1%. This is what's happening. A grave injustice is evolving and unfolding, and it's killing the planet. So if you look at the population of the first little square with it's mostly white, that's what that red square is 1%. And if you go over here, it shows the three worst countries here. Russia, okay, that 1% owns 75, 80%, whatever that is, of the wealth in Russia, okay? Then you look at India. My gosh, I didn't realize until I looked at this graph, the wealthy people in India own almost everything there. Thailand. The world average is here, which is over half. This is 2015 graphs. And then it shows some of the best three countries. Hungary, Belgium, and Japan are three of the best. And it shows those three here as well. So look at this graph. So it shows also the 10%. If you look back up at this original one on the corner, the population, 10% of the people own this much. And it shows in Russia, 10% of the people own over 90%, in India and so forth. So look at this. It's just so crazy that these wealthy people are getting wealthier and wealthier without doing any work, okay? Without serving humanity, okay? That is the crisis. If that 1% was focused on serving humanity, we wouldn't have any problems, but they're not. They're focused on serving themselves, okay? It makes you angry, but don't get angry, because we can't afford to be angry. Well, we should be angry, yeah, I guess. But we really can't afford to waste our energy on that anger. We should use that anger to fire us into action, okay? So this this is from the House of Justice from 2017 letter, that these unconscionable quantities of wealth are being amassed, and the instability that this creates is made worse by how income and opportunity are spread so unevenly, both between nations and within nations. But it need not be so. However, such conditions are the outcome of history. They do not have to define the future. And even if current approaches to economic life satisfied humanity's stage of adolescence, they are certainly inadequate for its dawning age of maturity. Seriously, this is amazing. We have to get over this. Okay, so this shows the military expenditures of the top military expenditures. Big waste. We're throwing away all this money. And now Ukraine is happening. And so all this money is going to Ukraine. And what that is doing is, if that money was spent, it could solve all hunger. It could solve the climate crisis. If this wealth was going towards solving the climate crisis, it would be solved. And we just are in big trouble. So if you look at the military, defense is over half the United States budget. Look at the US military, the one on the right. US military spends more than all those other countries combined. So we're talking about a huge waste of money. And where does that money come from? It comes from the thin air. The United States is able to create money out of thin air, okay? And we're gonna find out in the coming years that that is just thin air, because that wealth is gonna evaporate. At least that's my feeling, okay? Okay, so now humanity is in this huge crisis, sea level rise, heating, and the South Pacific Islands are on the receiving end of both the death of the coral reefs, which is the foundation of their prosperity, the local prosperity, and their food from all those fish, and also the sea level coming up and burying our coastal areas and our atoll nations. So Baha'u'llah says this in the hidden words: "O ye that are lying as dead on the couch of heedlessness, ye walk on the earth complacent and self-satisfied, heedless that my earth is weary of you, and everything within it shunneth you. Were you to open your eyes, you would in truth prefer a myriad griefs to this joy, and would count death itself better than this life." Okay, all of that stuff you see on TV, all those diversions, death would be better than life if all your life is focused on being complacent, self-satisfied, and heedless. So the earth is weary of mankind. It has a fever. It is being abused. Okay, so we all have to be humble. We all have to be active, and we all have to get busy if we want this world to exist in a good state for our children and grandchildren. Okay, so the root cause of poverty, environmental decline. I'm just going to I'm going to skip over it pretty quickly because I know I have too many quotes. Okay, but the welfare of one segment, we cannot just say, well, that's their problem. We have to actually look at the oneness of humanity. So we have to look at the natural environment, and this is in the House of Justice message. So if you're interested in these messages, I can send them to you. But this is really, really, it's like the Baha'i World Center has its finger on the pulse of the planet and of mankind. And it's just, these pearls of wisdom are amazing, but I won't read them all. But this one, Arthur put this in his book, and this is just an amazing quote from Baha'u'llah. "The well-being of humankind, of mankind, its peace and security are unattainable unless and until its unity is firmly established." So we must have world peace. We must have a just and unified economic order. We have to have it. If we don't have our unity, our well-being is going to be it's crumbling, and it's going to crumble away, and we won't have any well-being. Okay. So the World Center in 1985, the Baha'i World Center wrote this Promise of World Peace, which basically is a summary of what Baha'u'llah talked about and all the steps to build world peace. This is before the Soviet Union broke up. Okay, and then you saw a few years later, the Soviet Union broke up. This document was translated into Russian. It was given to Gorbachev. It was given to all the leaders in all the governments in their own language, in French, in German, in Yugoslav, the Czechoslovakian or Slovakian and Czech when it's now all broken up. So this Promise of World Peace actually talked about the process of establishing world peace and what was needed. And people said, oh, that's impossible. It can't happen. But a series of events has occurred that, and it absolutely is essential. And people are, people who thought it couldn't happen realize now that it has to happen, because all it takes is one person pushing a button for all of this civilization to end. So it says, whether peace is to be reached only after unimaginable horrors precipitated by humanity's stubborn clinging to old patterns of behavior, or is to be embraced now as an act of consultative will, is the choice before all who inhabit the earth. This was from 1985. They clarified this is exactly what Baha'u'llah was saying. And he said, it's inevitable, it will happen, but we make a choice on how it happens. Okay, so when I became a Baha'i, and this is to the Baha'is here, we need to actually get active in realizing what we represent, okay? That we are not just a religion. We are not a synthesis of all the best of everything. We're not that at all. We are a unique creation. In 1844, in this Persia, in Iran, the worst, darkest place in the world, where ignorance, people didn't know how to read and write, where women were sold in the market. You could go buy a new wife if you wanted to. Slaves were bought and sold. That this amazing thing came down, okay? The very first group in history to proclaim the equal rights and the equal status of women. And you know that 20,000 of our Baha'is were killed. And the Baha'is removed their veils. The Baha'i women removed these what do you call these, burqas, removed them and were strangled, right? And were killed. And we are the first group, and we should be proud of it. We are the first group in the world to focus as a religious community. Not only that, we were the first religious group to ban, well, maybe not the first, but all of these things together, we were the first, okay? But we're banning slavery and promoting the oneness of humanity to the point where we are encouraged to intermarry racially, okay? I think we're the first group who did that, okay? The first group to ban the clergy. This is no longer the time for priests and preachers, for rabbis or mullahs. We have to have independent investigation of truth. That is revolutionary, okay? Recognition that all the religions are of the same truth and that they all have to embrace science. This is Baha'u'llah's teaching way back from the 1800s. We have to ban that partisan politics are banned. We cannot join political parties because that will lead to the destruction of humanity as we see now, okay? That we have a new democratic administrative order that we're working on, which Baha'u'llah says is the sole refuge for a tottering civilization, okay? We have it well established in hundreds of countries, okay? And over 5 million people are being administered by this system, which we're told is a model that people will adopt this. They don't have to become Baha'is, but they're gonna see this, oh my goodness, here's an alternative. We don't have to have political parties anymore that divide people. We can actually have a unifying system that is global, okay? So also he talked about, we are calling for an international currency and a world economic system based upon justice. The systems that we have, all of that prosperity that we're talking on this internet, where all this prosperity is, we're riding a wave of prosperity that was created by massive genocide, land theft, massive land theft, slavery, colonialism. We are riding on our civilization, our US economic system, our European economic system. We are riding on a wave of prosperity that has been generated by horrific injustices. And it's continuing. In Fiji, people work in the hotels for 15 US a day, working very hard, overtime, with no overtime pay. For 6 days a week, they only get 1 day off. And the tourists are paying hundreds of dollars for their rooms. And the Outrigger Hotel here is paying $15 US a day. And in Hawaii, they're getting $15 an hour at least, okay, for the same job. this is injustice, okay? So it has to stop. But anyway, and it's undermining everything we're doing, okay? So we have to have world peace, and we have to have a world confederacy to enforce that peace. And all that money has to be directed towards saving this planet. And it's gonna happen, it will happen. It's been told by us, by Baha'u'llah, it will happen. And everything that's happening now, we were told basically what was gonna happen, and this is happening, it's unfolding, okay? And so this is my story. I'm gonna quickly go through. This is Winnie's in there. Winnie's over there by me. I'm over way in the back. I'm here, this little hippie there beside Winnie. Okay, this is sometime in 1970s anyway. So we, I think this was in South Carolina, this one. Okay, so this is me, young me. Kurt will recognize me. So here I am, this young guy, lost and, just trying to find myself, and going to university. Said, well, I better go to school. I better stop using drugs and alcohol and go to school. And I did. And so I went to University of North Carolina at Wilmington. And then when I was there, my second year in, I got a phone call from my father. He'd got a job in Fiji for the United Nations. So he was the head of the UN mission in Fiji. So they paid my way to Fiji in 1975 because I was still 21. So I went to Fiji, and it was amazing because I contacted the Fijian Baha'i community. And my father was living a kind of a wild life, and he had a different Mrs. Bowden that he'd flown over, not my mom. It was really bad. So I ran away and stayed with the Baha'i community and went all over these islands. And Fiji's a big place. I mean, that's the width of Fiji is like the width of Pennsylvania or New York State. It's 300 miles across. So it's a very big place. And I went all over these islands and stayed with these people. And I just transformed me because I knew that these people had the answer as far as the way they treated each other and the way they lived in balance. While I was there, and I went back in 1970, finished my degree in marine biology and went back in 78. While I was in Fiji, and I had a degree in marine biology, I tried to get a job, couldn't get a job, but I had a dream that I was standing on the shore, and I looked in the water and I saw all the corals were white. And I said, that's weird. And I jumped in my dream, I could breathe the water and I could swim without any mask or anything. I could see everything. And I saw this beautiful light shining from the past coming up, and I swam towards the light, and I saw that when I reached that light, I saw these beautiful white corals and human skeletons. White human skeletons were all mixed in with the corals. And I woke up in a cold sweat and I said, what does this mean? In 1978, nobody had heard of coral bleaching. It was discovered in, I think it was 1985. It was just first seen in Panama, in the Pacific coast of Panama. And I was given a glimpse into the future somehow in 1978 by seeing these corals all bleached. And I had seen human skeletons among just as bleached as the corals. So I believe that this was my destiny. I was asking, what can I do? What can I do? I was asking God, asking, how can I serve? And I was shown this. And this is what I'm doing now. This is what I'm doing. I'm probably in the very forefront of coral-based adaptation for coral. So I'm for field-based coral work in the world right now. So after graduating, though, I couldn't find a job in Fiji. I said, oh, I better get married then. So I married Kim, who was my dear one. Actually, it was a Tongan man who said, you're not supposed to marry somebody you're in love with, because that's hormones. You need to marry somebody you admire, who you really love to be with, who's just a really close friend. And you have to learn to love that person. And then immediately I realized, oh, I have to marry Kim. She is the perfect one. And, I always admired her. I met her at the schools and stuff. We're always teasing each other, and we always enjoyed each other's company. So I went back to North Carolina, married Kim in 1979. We started having kids on our first anniversary. We had little Aka right there, and then Lua. And this is in Palau in our house. We were teaching school. She was a nurse. It was wonderful. So we began building a life of service in the Pacific. We were making $5,000 each, seriously. So, but it was wonderful. It was beautiful. Okay. Oh, I'm going the wrong way again. Okay. And when we were living in Truk Lagoon, we noticed the children were going blind. So there were actually dozens of children going blind from lack of vitamin A. And so we tried to plant vegetables. Nobody was eating vegetables. It turns out the people in Chuuk don't eat vegetables. They eat breadfruit, they eat taro, and they eat fish. And their vegetables are the fish eyes and the fish liver. They eat the head, they eat the liver, and that is the vitamin A source. And so I said, well, why aren't these people, these children, you can see their puffy eyes, you can see the big stomachs. These people are nutritionally compromised and they can't see at night. And we had friends, some of our Baha'i friends had children that were really in bad situation, and we saw some children die. It was very sad. So I looked at this and saw, okay, why aren't there any fish? And this was the primary, when he talked about this is the primary way that the fish were being sold in the market, dynamite fish. So the US government had said, oh, let's encourage tourism. So we had this big fleet, that a Japanese fleet was sunk there, the big wrecks in Truck Lagoon, very famous. So they trained 50 Chukis to dive on those wrecks so they could supposedly take tourists down there and show them the wrecks. Well, there were no tourists coming, hardly at all. And so what they did is they used the scuba gear. They went down and they got these bombs, these big bombs and mortar shells, and they'd open them with a hacksaw under the water. You can actually saw a bomb open with a hacksaw underwater. And the gunpowder is plastic squares. It's unwettable. And they would take that gunpowder and make dynamite and blast the reefs. And the shockwave kills the fish. And they thought it was really smart because these people who were doing it, they got big boats and they were fast. And they would go everywhere, even the reefs that didn't belong to them. And they basically obliterated huge sections of reef. And that killed the habitat for the fish. Without corals, the fish have nowhere to live. And so all the reef fish were gone. And so people were dying or nutritionally compromised because of a lack of fish. They were losing their eyesight. And so I started looking at this and I studied these and I said, well, why aren't the corals coming? And what happens is the baby corals can settle down on this rubble, but then the rubble turns over when there's a storm or a stingray comes by or whatever, and all the baby corals were dying. And so I would break this rubble and say, wow, you could see all the dead baby corals in the rubble. So I started throwing branches of corals on the rubble and I was getting instant coral reef. So I was finding out you could repair that damage. And this is where I started doing the work. And I was in Ponape at the time and people said, you better go get your PhD, Austin. This is very interesting. And I did, I had to get the family out. And so in 1993, I moved the family to Puerto Rico, and this is young me. So, and I started working on corals. I was the very first person to work on coral restoration in the Caribbean. And nobody had done it before. And I didn't realize that the corals there were really going downhill. And just a few years later, they were declared critically endangered, these staghorn and elkhorn corals. So I started working on them. Oh, I'm going the wrong way again. Okay, and so these are corals we planted, actually. This is in Belize. And so 60 to 80% of the corals were already dead in the Caribbean, and we were able to get the corals back. And of course, with sea level rise, we need the corals to grow quickly because they produce calcium and they build rock and they help to mitigate the sea level rise, and they intercept wave energy. And that's very, very important with sea level rise. Okay, so I was the first person to develop these methods. This is the cookie method for some of the corals, and we have the rope method for other corals. And they're very simple. I mean, yeah, people are using these methods all over the world now. I kind of made breakthroughs. I did make breakthroughs, seriously. And I could only make these breakthroughs because I was thinking out of the box, like Winnie said, And so I was trying to find the truth among all the confusion. And okay, if corals can break and then regrow, then let's try to break them and regrow them into gardens. And we did. And it was very effective. Now, there are over 100 people doing this now full-time in the Caribbean. They don't need me there anymore. I started the project in Belize, in Dominican Republic, Jamaica. Tried to start it in Barbados. I trained 2 people from Barbados. But by the time they could get their permits, Cyclone Ivan came and killed all the corals. There was nothing for them to work with. So that was kind of died on the vine. So I still think that Barbados should bring a few corals from St. Lucia or somewhere nearby St. Vincent and start up. But anyway, that's another thing. Okay. And so corals are providing good fish houses, and sometimes our nurseries would too. This guy broke our coral table. He was so big and he was there almost every time. So we had to reinforce that nursery. It's a Goliath grouper. You can, anyway, it's really exciting to people to watch the corals grow. And I mean, seriously, in a year, going from that to that, it's just really encouraging. Young people, adults, everybody loves to see it happen. It's really empowering. It's transformative. So we need good things, but it's not a quick fix solution. So people were criticizing, oh, Austin's promoting a quick fix solution. Trash Austin, trash what he's doing. He's misleading people. And I never did try to mislead people, but we do need rays of hope in this dark time. So I say, good. We should encourage this kind of thing, but it's not the solution. We have to deal with climate change. The real solution involves changing our global economy. Okay, so we trim the corals, we plant them. Look at this. This is, somebody overdid it, but we use a cement blob and we take the little pieces, we stick them all in there like a porcupine. And then you get this amazing giant, within a year, you'll have a coral that is so big, way bigger than a bushel basket from this planting. And people said, what? We thought corals only grew slowly. Well, they can grow quickly as well. And then they become adults, and then they throw away half of their biomass in spawning, and they stop growing so quickly. So once they become adults, so they do grow quickly. If people measured us, how fast do we grow? Well, as adults, we just grow around in the middle a little bit, but we hardly grow. They say, oh, these are ancient beings. They're only growing that fast. Okay, but anyway, the corals, when they're young, they grow just like people. They grow very rapidly. Okay, and so I've discovered methods of outplanting them. So how do you get the corals planting? I'd put them on ropes and nail them in with concrete nails. And they're using this now as a primary method for, the ropes disappear. You say, well, you're putting plastic on the reef. It's completely surrounded by calcium. You can't even, it's embedded in the reef. Can't see it anymore. We tried using natural fibers, but it harbors too much bacteria and hurts the corals. So we're using plastic ropes. We don't feel guilty at all. Okay. And we involve lots of people. It's so encouraging. It's so fun. And it's just really engages people. But then we have to tell them this is not the solution. This is a tool to keep the corals alive. And we have to keep the corals alive for another 30 years until humanity gets their act together. Okay, it's a group of teachers in Honduras. Okay, these are children in Fiji. So this is really, really empowering, and it's really exciting, and it's gone all over the world. People are doing it. Many of them are kind of promoting a quick fix solution, but I have to always carry people back to it, that we have to focus on the answers and the solutions. Okay, so the communities, this is in Tana in Vanuatu, and these are people who wanted to do coral work, and they wrote me an email, and this was 10 years ago, and I said, well, I can't go there right now. I don't have the money, but do you have any no fishing areas? And they said, no, we don't. And I said, talk to the old people about the old custom of making tambu, of making a no fishing area. So these young people, now that this is 10 years earlier, they established these no fishing areas. Look out them, mo protect them, good marine resources. No break 'em reef, no fishing, no sack 'em net. Anyway, so no sack 'em doti, long solwata, plastic soap. Anyway, so this is in pidgin language. And now we know that in Tana, they have this beautiful house of worship they built. These were people that refused to become Christians because the Christianity required that they throw away all their custom, all their traditional beliefs. And so they had prophecies, and many of them have become Baha'is now. And there's a beautiful community in Tana. And so this is, okay, so the other thing we do is we get communities to look at bleaching. When bleaching happens, they go around and they look, oh my goodness, all the corals are bleached, but here's a super coral. This coral didn't bleach. And we get them to actually intervene. So once the reef turns white and corals start dying, the very few corals that survive, we get them to focus on them because they're predators. Okay, the things that eat coral for a living, once the corals are mostly gone, the few that survive will be attacked by crown and thorn starfish, or these snails that eat corals. So we get the young people or the communities to intervene to save these corals after the bleaching. Nobody's doing this. It makes so much sense. Okay, so the corals are dead, but you do have 1 out of 1,000, 1 out of 100 or something will survive. We've got to keep them alive. So that's the focus. Okay, so we take these corals and we actually take the whole coral sometimes because there's so many predators. And so this is Sarah and Kaleni. They have a Bachelor of Science in Marine Biology from the University of South Pacific. I've trained them, and they were our 2 staff for 2 years or 3 years. They've both gone off to better jobs and with more pay. and we have replacements for them. But these are two of the super corals that we put on these cement coral cookies. And this is one of our coral nurseries. And look at all the fish. And we found that the fish keep the corals healthy. So without fish, the corals don't do well. Without corals, the fish don't have a home. So they're all working together. So this is empowering. We're creating new jobs for people and getting the fish back again. So I've done training in Fiji, Samoa, Tuvalu, Kiribati, Vanuatu, Tahiti, Moorea, all around the region, as well as in the Caribbean in earlier years. So we're getting people to be happy. There's Mr. Happy there, okay? This is really very, very encouraging to people, and it's very powerful. And we're actually encouraging youth groups to do it. This is one of our classes, and these are people that work with youth. And we're trying to get the youth animators to get involved as well. In Tuvalu, we have a group of young people who formed their own NGO. And in Samoa, we have a group of young people in Matautu who are doing it on their own. And, over and over. And the Saltwater Sisters of Vanuatu are doing it. It's a group of girls that surf. And the coral gardeners in Moorea and Tahiti are doing it. We have so much good stuff happening. And our strategy involves, this is our primary site in Fiji, our strategy involves going to the very hot water reefs near the land. You see this bay here, all those red spots, very hot water corals. We move them to cooler water because the water is getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And what we found out based upon Kiribati is as the bleaching goes on, the waters are getting hotter and hotter. Those corals can survive unbleached. Some of them can survive unbleached in these hot pockets, but the water's getting hotter, and even those hot pocket adapted corals are going to die because it's going to get so hot. So we're moving them out to cooler waters. So the hottest adapted corals are coming out to cool waters because the cooler water corals are all dead already. Okay, the ones on the main reef are dead. So that main outer reef is mostly dead now because the corals were not adapted. So this is what we call translocation, and this is something that we've done. Now, if you look at the Pacific Islands. And the Maldives is in the Indian Ocean on the side. The Maldives in 1998, the Maldives reefs died, and they sued the United Nations. They got $100 million to deal with that. And if you look at the Gilbert Islands, which is Kiribati, the Phoenix Islands, and the Line Islands, there's 3 island groups in Kiribati, and or it looks like Kiribati the way they spell it, but it's Kiribati. These 3 island groups are the most bleached of any place in the world, and their reefs are completely dead. Papua New Guinea is second to Kiribati in its bleaching, but in Papua New Guinea, the reefs didn't die as badly. We don't know why, but for some reason, the same degree of heat is not killing the corals in Papua New Guinea, and we think it's related to the trace nutrients coming off of the land. We think that the atolls have very, very poor water quality, not poor water quality, they have very good water quality with very little nutrients in it. So it's it looks like a lack of iron, a lack of manganese, and a lack of phosphorus that make the islands of Kiribati more susceptible to death due to bleaching. And Papua New Guinea, the corals, even though they've been very hot waters, a lot more of them have survived. So we're looking at this now. But if you look at all the numbers of months of bleaching, Kiribati is the leader. And this is in Kiribati. This is Christmas Island. And all the inner lagoon here, when I came there in 2016, I was asked by my friend Taratau Kirata, who passed away just a couple months ago, but Taratau asked me, he was the head of fisheries, and he said, can you come and help because our reef is dead? So in 2016, I stopped in this island, and I looked for 4 days, we looked for corals, and we were only able to find 2 little pieces of coral the size of my fist or smaller. Of the branching corals, we only found 2 in looking for 4 days. They were all gone, and all the corals of this lagoon had died, and they were standing, all these skeletons just standing up like this. And I realized, oh my goodness, if I'd only been able to go there a few months before, I could have taken lots of little samples out to the outside reef on the cool waters, and those corals in the lagoon wouldn't have died because they were all very, very heat adapted. They could survive to close to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And it went up to over 100 there, obviously. Nobody had a temperature gauge, but it went up so hot that these hottest adapted corals that they had all died because it just got too hot. So this is why we're moving corals from hot waters to cooler waters to keep them alive. Okay, this is a huge, I've never in my life seen such huge Possilopora colonies, but it's dead. It's all dead. It's being chewed away by the parrotfish. You can see a parrotfish there. This is a huge dead colony. Over and over again, this is all dead. There's a little teeny colony that's yellowish, that's alive, but almost all the corals dead on Kiribati. So this dead coral is now the habitat for this little teeny brownish microalgae. You can see on the surface of this rock is a little microalgae. That is Gambierdiscus toxicus. That is a toxic marine algae that sits on there. It's a toxic dinoflagellate, and it results in fish poisoning. The fish eat that, and it concentrates in their fat tissues, and the fish become too poisonous to eat. I only ate reef fish one time on that island. I was sicker than a dog, okay? The chief of fisheries was in the hospital. Some of our wonderful community members, horrible, horrible. You can't eat reef fish on this island anymore because the reef fish are too toxic to eat. So what can you do on an atoll when your primary protein source is poisonous? This is really, really bad. I got sick of climate change. Climate change killed the corals. I got sick from those dead corals being there and the fish concentrating the poison. This is really, really bad. But there's two fish they can eat. They can eat tuna fish from the ocean, and they can eat milkfish. Milkfish don't eat on the corals. The milkfish are living in brackish water. And so there are two kinds of fish they can still eat. Okay, so we searched and searched, and we were able to find a couple colonies of this and that. And I put things on, this is all we could find after 4 days. And searching for mile after mile after mile, we found this much. And I put it here in the nursery. We grew them up, and we were able to plant these corals back out to the reef. We went to another atoll. We went to an atoll about 160 kilometers away to Taborang, and it was impacted, but not as badly. We brought coral samples from another atoll and brought them back to Christmas Island. I've got them on the ropes and so forth here. And so we grew them on the ropes. And remember, these are the only corals on the island are right here, okay? Almost everything is dead. There were a few of these massive corals, the ones that are big and round, those were still there, a few. But these are the only branching corals on the island. We have them now in our nursery, and we've started to plant them. Look at them, they're growing nicely. Parrotfish were chewing away at them though. We had a problem with parrotfish. They were so hungry for these corals. They said, wow, this is ice cream. So, and these are some of our Baha'i youth. And we got the Catholics and the Protestants, the Baha'is all working together, the youth to plant these corals. So we trim off little branches, we put them on ropes, and then we nail these down onto the reef to get things started. And then the COVID hit, so I haven't gone up to follow. I haven't been able to follow up because there has been not a single case of COVID in the Line Islands where Christmas Island is. And so there still has been no planes, okay? A few medical evacuation flights. I was on the very last flight out of there in March of 2020. We left a week early because we saw the COVID happening. And the people who didn't leave, who stayed, had to stay there for 9 months before a plane came. Okay, so I was lucky to get home. I was lucky to leave early. Okay, so we have to, back to the whole bigger solution. We have to reinvent the global and local economies. We have to really transform this planet. We can plant corals all we want, but if they don't cause a basic change in what's happening, it's all for nothing. We can keep the corals alive for another 30 years, maybe 50 years. But if the ocean keeps getting hotter and hotter, and if it gets acidification starts to come in, ocean acidification, you heard about that. I'm not even talking about that right now. But if we don't get our act together, the ocean will die, the entire ocean. What we're doing with corals is only buying some time. It's not the solution, okay? It's buying us time. And that's my big message is, yes, it's a ray of light, but that ray of light will go away and darkness will dominate if we don't reinvent the system that we have. And the winds of change are blowing, and this is destiny. It's going to happen whether we like it or not. You can go screaming if you want to, but it's going to happen. Okay. And it's better if we actually all work together to do it consciously, and the suffering levels will be lesser if we work together. Anyway, so the extremes of wealth and poverty in the world are becoming more and more untenable. As inequity persists, so the established order is seen to be unsure of itself and its values are being questioned. This is positive. How many people do you know that are questioning everything right now? That's a wonderful receptivity is happening. Okay, people are looking for the solutions. They've given up on the old because they know it doesn't work anymore. Maybe it never worked. Okay, whatever the tribulations that a conflicted world must confront in the future, we pray that the Almighty will help his loved ones to overcome every obstacle in their path and to assist them to serve humanity. The larger the presence of a Baha'i community in a population, the greater its responsibility to find ways of addressing the root causes of the poverty in its surroundings. This is a challenging thing. Poverty can be physical, it can be spiritual. Okay, and right now we have a poverty of everything. I mean, this is a very poor system that we have. So basically, we have to overcome every obstacle and serve on a higher level. So we are living in a poor community specifically, and we're looking at the root cause of poverty. And so we have this Teitei Livelihoods Centre that we've formed. It's permaculture center. We have happy chickens. We focus. This is my grandson Kiki, sitting on Poe the dog, and my son-in-law's brother is right on my left. And so this is a Peace Corps volunteer who's come with people from her community to learn about happy chickens. So, okay, I'm going the wrong way again. Okay, so we're looking at unsustainable practices. This shows a traditional, normal Fijian garden on a hill, steep hill, burning. You see how they burn and they're burning up all the nutrients in the soil. And this is what we do at the Teitei. We actually have micro terraces that the Indian farmers have taught us how to, we made these terraces using oxen. They still plow with oxen, and they showed us how you can plow with oxen to create these terraces. It's a lot easier than it looks. So we're looking at that. This is my grandson Kiki, and these are some of the chickens. And we have a hatchery. We've produced over 40,000 baby chickens so far for communities. We do sell them at cost, and we also give some away. We give them away and we sell them at cost. And now we have gotten a grant from the Australian Embassy. We have 70 little incubators because I cannot produce enough. So we have 70 little incubators. We are establishing little businesses for youth and women, especially on their own little hatcheries. So we're going to the next level. And I showed you where we're getting the communities to establish no fishing areas. So if you establish a no fishing area, what you're going to eat for your protein? Or if your fish are poisonous, what are you going to do for protein? So chickens are a very good alternative because you can eat the eggs. And this is a really good protein for the brain of the children and before they go to school, eating eggs and so forth. So we're focusing on egg production in chickens. And also you have to eat the extra roosters too. So we're looking at this as an alternative to fish and as an alternative to other types of protein that they can get. They don't have to go to the store. Okay. And so this is a group of Baha'is from Lautoka who came to learn about the chickens and permaculture. So probably most of the groups are not Baha'is, and we don't exclude anybody. And prosperity is everybody. We don't consider us and them. It's all us. Everybody's us. We just finished a workshop of people. We were learning livelihoods, and we had one of the traditional potters came. And this hasn't been fired yet, but we made traditional pottery, and we taught people how to make the pottery so that they can do this as a livelihood for their own use or to sell to tourists or whatever. And so we're looking at pottery. We did soap making. We did virgin oil production. We made vegan coconut cheese. We made coconut vinegar. We did happy chickens. We did permaculture and we made chocolate. They love that. That was their favorite. So we take cocoa pods and we ferment them and we make and my son Aka, Kiki's father, is the chocolate producer. And so we made tuki chocolate, where instead of using a fancy grinder, we just smashed the beans and made the chocolate. Actually, I like it better than the really smooth one. I like those little crunchy bits in it. It really got good. So we're doing all these things, and we're teaching people how to consult. This is, the Ruhi, one of the Ruhi books. We teach people how to problem solve, how to identify their problems, how to do group consultation for decision making. And this is the foundation of local governance. Okay. And so we have a pavilion at the farm. This is our pavilion. And we do multi-faith, multicultural harmony, multi-faith meetings here. We have Muslim chants, Hindu songs and Hindu chants and Hindu prayers. We have Christian prayers and songs. We have Baha'i chants and songs. This is the first place in this entire valley where all the different religions have come together, and those of no religion, to come and to experience that unity and that beautiful illumination. And it's just amazing. So this is a new dawn, and here it's dawning behind me as well. So this is really something that a 17-year-old boy, when focused, can do so much. And it's like, wow. I mean, it's like, I'm not all proud about it. It's like, I'm all like, wow, thank you so much. Because this is amazing. You got to get that humility. And I keep telling people, no matter how big your shadow gets on the wall, because you get close to the light, your shadow becomes big. It's only because of your position. It's not because of you. You're no bigger than you ever were. This is tiny as you ever were. Don't turn around and say, look how big I am. Don't look at the shadow on the wall, because then pride cometh before the fall, And so it's very important to keep this humble attitude of learning and this humility. Okay, so the last thing that we're doing here in the valley, there is no local government of any kind. We don't have any government, okay? We are just lost. And because we're not indigenous, the indigenous communities, there's 3 villages here, and we're mostly Indians and mixed races that are farmers here. But the indigenous people have a chief, and the chief appoints this, and it's all top down, and they have some kind of government. And that's part of the Constitution of Fiji. But we are non-native peoples, which is like 40% of the population. And we have no government in this area. So we are actually creating a government. We have our local spiritual assembly, our local council, and we are looking at the needs of all the community. And how do we elect ourselves? We don't have campaigning. We don't have nominations. Okay. We don't have political parties. We don't divide. We just get a little ballot paper once a year, and we say, secretly, everybody's a candidate. Okay. You write down the 9 names from the community that you want to serve on the local council. And the 9 with the most names become the local council. They don't get paid. They're serving. It works. And so we believe that this is the solution for Fiji. And we believe that it won't take much once we really start shining, because we can solve these problems the community are facing. We can really, because this local council, they really do care, because these are the best of the best that the community has, that we are trying to establish a new pattern, a new model. And if anybody there that's listening to this says, I'm retired now, I'm going to leave, I want to serve. If you have any skills, we also accept year of service, 6 months of service, 3 months of service. And we accept people to come here, and there's lots of jobs that can be done. We need a financial manager. We're getting grants now, and we don't know how to handle the money very well. We don't know how, we need a financial management, somebody to teach us what to do. We need all kinds of things. And so, but we need governance. And so this administrative order, we're told that this, not only are the men and women equal and the races are equal, but that there is a new system that we must develop of governance that must be unifying. It must involve those people who are the most humble and the most pure and the best public servants need to be chosen in a way without creating political parties. And that this is up and running already in our Baha'i communities, and it needs to stimulate change. And this is probably the most valuable thing that we have, the most precious thing. People have accepted the equality of men and women. They've accepted the race unity for the most part. Many of them have accepted the oneness of religion. All these things have been accepted, But this is something that needs to be promoted, that there is a unifying way of governing society. And it has local, national, and international levels. And this is something that's very good. In Kiribati, 20% of the population are Baha'is. Okay, some people don't realize that. This is from the government statistics on the census. So their local assemblies are starting to do all kinds of stuff. They arranged for me to train them how to make various things. This is a seaweed. They grow seaweed to export. They didn't know they could eat it. So we're doing a seaweed workshop on how to make seaweed products. So all these solutions for well-being. They didn't know how to make virgin coconut oil. My God, they didn't know how to make virgin coconut oil. So they're drowning in coconuts. So we did virgin coconut oil. We did soap production. We did how to make the protein cheese, chicken farming, everything. They got it. Okay, the coconut trees there are so poor. The soil is so poor. This is a potassium and iron deficiency. So we have them burning all their cans, crushing them and putting them with the coconut trees. And we're taking seaweed from the shore that washes up and putting them, because that's the potassium source. So fertilizing these trees, this is Koto, one of our project officers, fertilizing these coconut trees. So we have to reinvent. So the hearts of the friends everywhere must be assured, their eyes clear-sighted and their feet firm as they work patiently and sacrificially to raise a new order in its stead because of this disintegration of a lamentably defective world order. So it's gathering momentum. This disintegration is gathering momentum in all parts of the planet, and it's engendering hopelessness, confusion, hostility, and insecurity. And we basically have to not focus. Okay, this is my challenge, not focusing on this disintegration. We have to focus on the reintegration and we have to have our feet firmly grounded in hope. People, everybody knows the world's falling apart. We don't have to focus on that. And all the details and all these rumors and even fictitious things on the internet, we don't have to deal with that. We have to focus on solutions, and we have to be there for our children and our grandchildren. We have to be a source of calm. Okay, now the last thing is that we see in Iran, the Baha'is in Iran there's new waves of persecution, horrible, okay? This group of women, of young girls, these are the children's class teachers who are all executed 40 years ago. This is the National Assembly members on the top who were executed 40 years ago, okay? This NSA member, it was 1982 that this group was killed. 40 years ago, about 40 years, okay? 40 years is the time in the Bible or whatever, 40 years in the desert, 40 years of a flood. 40 years has now been reached now since this revolution, and the House of the Bab being destroyed, all the Baha'i properties being seized, the Baha'is not being able to go to university, all being excluded, and we're the largest religious minority in Iran after Islam. And so we have all this persecution going on, and we know that eventually this community will be emancipated, and this incredible suffering, believe it or not, is bearing fruit in what we do, okay? And this is something that just happened right here where I'm sitting in this house. Here's Fiji. You can see Fiji in the middle. There's Tuvalu, Vanuatu, Samoa, and Tonga. Just on the 15th of January, this house was shaking, and it felt like somebody was running on the roof. I went upstairs in the attic. I went down. What's going on here? The house is shaking and reverberating. The Tonga Volcano was blowing up. We felt it in Vanuatu, Tonga, Samoa, Fiji, Tuvalu. Okay, we heard it, okay? It was crazy. The biggest explosion since Krakatoa, okay? And in Tonga, I got a message because Ruhia worked for the New Zealand High Commission, and that's the only internet that worked. Ruhia was telling, they were right during this explosion, at 4 o'clock, they gathered together, the National Baha'i Assembly, some of the Baha'is with the Prime Minister. They were having a special prayer session with the Prime Minister and his cabinet. We're all at the Prime Minister's house, and everything was fine. There was no sign of any volcano. They got in there, Baha'is started saying their prayer, and the first explosion occurred during the prayer. They didn't say anything said the second prayer, a second giant explosion occurred. And then the last prayer, the third one, they were saying the prayer, and one that was so deafening, they couldn't hear anything. You know, a lot of them kind of couldn't hear anything. It was so loud. And then they said, okay, we're going home. They broke up. One of the Baha'is on the National Assembly was one of the key Red Cross people that had to stay and do the planning. They were going to rush to get everybody out away from the shore and everything. But this explosion occurred right during prayer, right during a time of very significant prayer with the prime minister and his cabinet, okay, in Tonga. And it happened right there, I mean, practically beside them, 60 kilometers away, where they couldn't hear because they could hardly hear because it was a deafening explosion. So I remembered, oh my goodness, this is in looking at Iran, Baha'u'llah said, should they attempt to conceal its light on the continent, it will assuredly rear its head in the midmost heart of the ocean and raising its voice proclaim, I am the life giver of the world. So this is the world. Okay, so destiny is coming true. Everything is exactly as it should be. We just have to get busy, okay? And world peace will be established. It's destiny. And what's happening in Ukraine, it's only one of a series of events, a chain of events that will happen that will be momentous, possibly catastrophic in their nature, and we should not be distracted. We just stay focused. We deal with, refugees, we deal with hunger, we deal with poverty, we deal with building race unity, we deal with building a unified community and providing an alternative when lamentably defective systems fail. So our coral work, we're doing that, and we know that it's only giving us some time, but we do need those rays of hope. So you can be a ray of hope in your community. I know you can be. Okay, that's about it. Okay. So be a ray of hope. That's all I can say. Now I'm going to get out of the share. Okay. Whoop. Okay, there we go. Okay, that was pretty long. If people are still there, if they want to ask questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness, you around the world, that's wonderful. So much information. We do have some questions. First of all, we did have a question about the PowerPoint. Would it be okay if I shared that PowerPoint with people if they wanted to write to me, or I could also—
Oh, you can share anything, of course. Okay. And if this was recorded, yes, so if you can share it with the narration, that's great. Otherwise, I can try at some point to put a narration on the PowerPoint. But yeah, this is for sharing. This is for sharing.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I also have the PowerPoint that you sent to me, and so I can post that on our webpage. People can go to
right. I added a few more pictures after I made that, so a couple more pictures, but
all right.
But it's pretty much the same. Yeah.
Okay. Great. So we do have a few questions here. First of all, Quanta.
Thank you. Hi, Austin. This is Faika with my new name, Quanta. Maybe you don't see me. I only have a picture.
Okay.
I really, really appreciate it, and I hope to visit you guys next year sometime. But what I wanted to ask you is that how do we balance between, especially in the West, how do we balance giving people hope at the same time, making them realize of the realities without being accused of being negative and discouraging? Because when we speak about materialism, and everybody have their own focus, and my focus is poverty and materialism because they are interconnected, just as you have said. So how do we present it to the Western people, because they feel guilty in a way? And
Yeah, they should be. They
and
should feel guilty.
instead of recognizing that they feel guilty, they accuse you of making them feel guilty and being negative because they don't want to see it. So how do we as Baha'is balance between doing our duty of talking about the realities, at the same time giving them the hope that they
Okay.
they can have
Okay.
a everyday make
Yeah,
change.
I think I get your understanding. So we're supposed to, I mean, anybody can answer that question here probably, but I think that we are supposed to engage in discussions. Okay, this is the time for engaging in discussions. And we have to be careful not to be too negative, actually. So the thing is, we have to judge the receptivity of our audience and who we're talking to. And one thing that I used to have a problem with, I would say the same thing to everybody, right? And that's not right. You can't just, you can't just, it's like pushing a button and you say the same thing and pushing it off. No, ask the person about what their life is like. The thing is, really actually care about the person. Okay, if you really want to cause a change in that person, you have to love that person, and you have to, not dump your stuff on them, right? Not in the beginning. And the thing is, if they're receptive in a certain way, then you deal with that part. If they're not receptive in a certain way, you don't touch on it. And so we're supposed to be engaging in discussions, and by those discussions, we need to be gentle if we can. Okay, and so it's a challenge for me. I know it's a challenge for you too. I know you. Okay, I know me. Okay, so it's a big challenge. But we really have to be a little bit more compassionate with ourselves and with those around us. And we really have to think of, we're not trying to convert anybody. We're trying to help them. And they're the ones who convert themselves to new ways and new ways of thinking. So it's just, I mean, I don't really have the answer, but all I know is that as an older, wiser person, I made a lot of mistakes in the past that I try to avoid now. And I just try to engage with where people really are, and I don't try to have an agenda. Having an agenda, it needs to be. It's like with the junior youth. We're doing a service to them. We're trying to get them to think for themselves, not trying to impose our thoughts on them. And so it's just, that's all I can say about that. Does it help any or no? I don't know.
Thank you. Say hi to Kim.
Yes.
Anyone else have a comment or a question?
Yeah, I can have a comment. I thought that was absolutely riveting presentation. Extremely. I had an experience at 17 too that brought me a long way. But I thought, Austin, that was absolutely riveting and extremely inspiring. And I really thank Winnie for inviting you.
Thank you. It just, if you know any young people who are really engaged and really, the thing is, sending people out into the field who don't really, it's like, don't impose it on them if they really don't want to make a difference. But if you know anybody who has a burning desire to serve, that's what it really comes up to. Winnie, I think that's what Oscar had. He had a burning desire, and you do too, a burning desire to serve. Okay, and that burning desire, we need to give those people openings and opportunities. I was so fortunate that the universe gave me the opportunity by sending me to Fiji when I was 21. What if that had never happened? I would have found something to do in North Carolina, but I might have gotten swept away, because it's a difficult place. It's a very difficult place to live in America, very difficult. And so I found that among people of a different race and a different culture, it didn't turn on all those negative, all that negativity that I had gotten, all those handicaps that I had in my own society were somehow just sleeping. Okay, so it was easier for me to to really shine and not be, negative and so forth and so on. I find it very difficult to live in America and the developed world, because I have a very hard time, and I don't think I can shine, seriously. So if you know anybody who really has a burning desire to serve and needs to shine, we'll try to get them out to us if you can, and we'll try to see what we can do. But if they're not, I don't know, how do you judge people? So, come out with them. Bring your kids out here, your grandchildren, and see what we can do and get people involved. But I know there are things that are happening there that are amazingly encouraging from what I've seen with the junior youth and with some of your agricultural things and so forth. There are wonderfully positive things that can be done to get people involved. But it really is important for young people to experience something positive so they can build their life. Seriously, I think it's a miracle that I was able to do anything. And if I had stayed in America, I don't know what I would have done. And I wouldn't have married Kim probably, and I would have been swept. I think I might have been swept away. I may not be here right now. I wouldn't be. So yeah. So I don't know if I'm asking, but thank you for appreciating it. I really do. I'm really thrilled that you liked it. Okay.
Winnie?
Yes, Austin, it's so interesting that just yesterday I saw a special on the barrier reef of Florida. I did not realize that Florida, it's one of the few barrier reefs, and maybe the only one for North America, if I remember correctly. Do the people there get in touch with you? Are they aware?
Most of the coral restoration going on now is in the Caribbean. And actually, it's a little bit hijacked, okay. I don't care about it. I love it that people are doing it. But one of the problems that's happening now is people are using it as a way of gaining money, okay? Like with anything, materialism, okay? So they've developed these methods, and it looks so beautiful hanging in the ocean, but it requires an army of scuba divers with toothbrushes to clean them. And so what we've done is we put our coral nurseries down on the reef where the fish can come in, the little parrotfish, the little surgeonfish, will clean it all up by themselves. We don't have to do anything. They're self-cleaning. So they've created a system that requires this army of scuba divers. So the Coral Restoration Foundation of Florida, they earn $3 million a year in fees that the people come to volunteer, and they have to pay as volunteers, and they're raising all this money. So they don't have an incentive to change. I've said, why are you doing that? Come on, there's a much easier way. You could use volunteers in a different way, but no, they don't want to change. So Florida is an interesting thing. And right now there's this horrible disease that's come in called the rapid tissue loss disease. It started around Miami, and it's something that's come in by some ship somehow, but it's now spreading into the corals, and it's killing all the corals that live for hundreds of years. Almost all of them are being wiped out now. And it's just so sad. So the Caribbean, it's like looking into the future for if the world keeps going on. But there are some signs of hope though. Look at Haiti and look at Dominican Republic. Dominican Republic has 8 million people. I think Haiti has maybe 11 million, I'm not sure. But they have, the whole Pacific Islands. If you include Hawaii, Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, all these countries, we have barely 3 million people, okay? So imagine all this reef that we have. We have a huge amount of reef and a very low population density. And even though there's all that people that are being Dominican Republic and Haiti, there's still corals there. There's still corals living there. So it shows that corals are pretty resilient, actually. And the other is pollution and this and that. Well, it turns out the Great Barrier Reef where you're seeing, the corals that are doing best are in the nearshore polluted waters. The corals that are out in the clean, pristine waters are mostly dead. So they're trying to figure out what's going on here, okay? And it may be partly because of the extra nutrients they're getting. The algae is stronger inside the corals in the polluted waters. And so that algae is able to photosynthesize better when there's stress. And in the nutrient poor waters, the clean waters on the outside, the corals are more stressed. They don't have the nutrients. And so maybe they're bleaching. But anyway, the Florida area has got huge amounts of money being spent on restoration. And I don't know. I mean, I think it's great and everything, but I think I think in the United States, I would spend more on, I mean, yeah, you have to keep the corals alive, but I would keep the corals alive, realizing, but every time you plant them there, I mean, I think they're going to die. So you've got to solve so many problems. If what killed the corals in the first place is not solved, then planting corals is not the solution, right? So if a lack of, if you have too many predators or you have a disease or something, it's just like you're feeding that disease. So in the Pacific, where it's mainly just climate change, we can solve that problem by getting the corals that are heat adapted and then putting them in cooler waters where it's not, even in the next 30, 40, 50 years, it's not predicted to get so hot that they'll die. So we're taking corals that are adapted, moving them to where it's cooler, where they can survive. And so we've actually solved the problem of heat and bleaching. So for temporarily, right? For at least for 30 to 50 years. So in Florida, I think that they're spending so much money on something that may just be a waste of money. And I think that the root cause of the problem needs to be solved in America.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Joe? Joe, you want to unmute?
Okay, so one thing I didn't say was that I have a big paper I have International Coral Reef Symposium is going to be in Germany in the first week of July. And I'm going to give a talk there. It's going to be remote, but it's pre-recorded. It's another PowerPoint. And what I'm saying is that this is the problem. The world, and Arthur, I want you to hear this too. So the world has a real problem in that there is no war. Okay, like in Ukraine, okay, you've got Ukraine. You've got now, there's a front line and you've got people fighting the Russians, keeping them at bay. What if there was no front line? What if they decided, oh, let's just retreat? Right now, there would be no Ukraine. It would be part of Russia, right? Russia would have conquered all of Ukraine. What's happening now with coral reefs is that there is no front line. Kiribati is the frontline country. It's the country where the reefs have died from climate change. And there's absolutely nothing going on there at all. There's no studies. There are 33 atolls and only 5 have even been checked. 2 of them by me, okay? Only 5 atolls have even been checked to see what condition they're in. 2 by me, okay? So there's nothing, and those are the other 3 are by graduate students or something. There is absolutely no war on the impacts of climate change on the coral reefs. There is nothing being done to actually fight this. This is the problem. And I'm going to the International Coral Reef Symposium. I'm saying we have to create a war. And on a war, you work on a front line. You go to the front, and that is where you put your troops. That is where the lessons to be learned are. That's where I learned. Kiribati is what taught me now how to get these Fijian reefs ready, okay? Kiribati has given me most of the lessons I've learned about really what to do now and how to be effective has come from the front line. And I'm the only coral reef restoration scientist who's worked on the front line like that in Kiribati. And so, the only one thing that they've accepted is called the 50 Reefs Initiative. What the 50 Reefs Initiative has done is they've said, okay, we're going to choose the 50 reefs that have the most hope of surviving. And it's like triage. We're going to only focus on those 50 reefs and just forget everybody else, okay? And so they've got this giant fund called the Global Fund for Coral Reefs. The Global Fund for Coral Reefs have decided they will not fund anywhere that's not in the 50 Reefs Initiative. So Kiribati doesn't get anything. Tuvalu doesn't get anything. Samoa doesn't get anything. Vanuatu doesn't get anything. The only country in the South Pacific that gets anything from all that huge pot of money is Fiji, French Polynesia, Solomons, and New Guinea. Those are the only places. Then Solomon Islands doesn't want to have anything to do with it. Okay, and so so basically, what that represents is a retreat. So the only strategy we have is retreat, and so basically, this is where this is probably the most important thing I've ever done in my life, and I want you to pray for me, please. Okay, I want you to focus your energy because I have to finish this presentation and get it submitted in the next 2 days. And I'm basically saying this is the time for creating an actual battle plans, strategies, an army, a war plan. We need generals, we need troops, we need ammunition, we need weapons, we need all these things lined up to keep corals from going extinct. Because country by country, just like Kiribati, we're gonna fall. One by one, they're gonna fall like dominoes, and massive numbers of species will go extinct. And it's just, I mean, before they said, oh, they'll be alive somewhere, these corals. Well, it turns out Fiji, most of the corals that have been described for Fiji, they thought they were the same as species as in Australia. They've done genetics on them, and they've also done taxonomy on them. We have most of our corals, at least over half of our corals, are endemics that are found nowhere else on the planet. Okay, that's what they found out recently. And so they're describing another 30 species of acropora that are staghorn corals, staghorn acropora from Fiji, that are not found anywhere else so far, described from anywhere. So when the corals of Fiji go extinct, we lose species. When the corals of Kiribati go extinct, we lose species. So what I'm saying is that please focus your mental and spiritual energy on me if you can, okay? Because this is the biggest thing I've ever done, is trying to refocus energy of the world to create an actual strategy, an actual war against the impact. So it's a defensive war. And it's Ukraine is the example. If you just said, oh, we're just gonna defend Kyiv, we're just gonna go to the western side and we'll defend that place and pull back, you know that would be a failure. And that's exactly what's happening to reefs now. And the only thing is in the Caribbean, they're doing things, but it's not, I mean, that's actually beyond it's not the same. Maybe it is the front line in some points, yeah, but they're using a lot of money to do things that don't solve the root cause of the problem. And so in the strategies that I'm doing is translocating corals from hot water to cooler waters within each nation. And these are islands that don't have the disease problems. They don't have other problems. So in the Caribbean, you have not just climate change, you have disease, you have pollution, you have a whole list of problems. So it's not so clean and clear. In the Pacific, the Kiribati, what killed the reefs was 100% was climate change, okay? And so it's very clear to make a war against climate change here because we don't have the complicating factors of other things.
Right.
So,
Well, thank
so
you.
anyway, so
Austin.
that's what I'm doing. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. We have a couple more questions and we kind of need to
Okay.
wrap up here. So we have Joe and then Holiance, and then Quanta said she had a very brief question, and then we'll
Okay,
end.
Joe.
Hey, I don't have a question, but I'm sitting here feeling extremely verklempt. And I seem to remember, I think I met Austin when I was at Fort Bragg, and I remember Kim Kirby's name. So there's this nostalgia happening. At the same time, this presentation today for me has been an extreme gift. Today's my 72nd birthday, and it's the year of Soylent Green. And I've been dreading this birthday for like 20 years. I don't know if anybody remembers that movie Soylent Green came out in the early 70s, takes place in 2022 when nature is dead and the oceans are dead. And I used to glibly think about being the old man in that movie. And now that I am the old man, it's not a joke anymore. And so your presentation, having that glimmer of hope and then looking at the work with the permaculture, and you can hear the roosters in the background of your talk. That's where it's happening is in the grassroots and people that are working with the earth and embracing Mother Nature and working in tandem with the forces and the spirits of nature to solve problems. So I'm very, very verklempt in a good way, and I am very appreciative of the glimmers of hope coming from the midmost heart of the ocean to my urban neighborhood in Ohio. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. I remember meeting you but I would have never recognized you on the street.
Well, it's like what, 50 years later or something.
Yeah, really. Seriously. I was just a kid back then. So were you. So
yeah, I know.
Yeah, but seriously, the Pacific does have a destiny because we have small nations that can really change quickly. And we are really creating a model here. And it's just a matter of time before it crawls out. There's even a prophecy in Fiji about where it starts. And it turns out that we're right here in the place where the prophecy is, in the Singatoka Valley. There was an ancient seer here who said that, and there was a movement against Christianity. They were trying to oppose Christianity, and the local church here in Singatoka, they were reconstructing it because in 1999 they said Jesus was going to come out of the sky, so they were going to rebuild the church. This is a church from the 1800s. As they were rebuilding the foundations, they discovered 72 skeletons in the foundation alone, and they said the whole floor was covered with other skeletons they didn't even touch. And they said, well, where are these? What are these? Why are these skeletons under the church? Oh, these are the heathens. These are the people that refused to be baptized. We killed them all. Okay, so the history of Christianity in Fiji was not peaceful. They call it the Veivali Nilotu. There was a Fijian seer, like a prophet, named Apolosi, and he had visions. He said that there would be flying boats that would come. They would land on the water. Okay, this is in the 1800s, right? He said flying boats would come, and then those flying boats, when they came to Fiji, then they would start landing in Nandi, right exactly where the international airport is. So he gave this prophecy, which tells us that what he was saying was true, because he said exactly where the Nandi airport is. And he talked about flying boats. He said, don't become Christian because you will become European. He says, Jesus is true. His teachings are true. But what they're teaching you is European custom and European culture. And don't join that. And so he said, in the future, a new Lotu will come, a new religion will come. It will come after the flying boats are landing in Fiji. Irene Jackson came to Fiji in 1954, the year I was born, on a flying boat, okay? And although there were some Baha'is in the country already, she is the one who kind of took me under her wing and took me all over Fiji. She was amazing. So that was when I was just young. But anyway, so he said, Apolosi said that when the flying boats are landing in Fiji, the new Lotu will be here already, the new religion. And the two signs of that religion, he says, they will have no talatala, no preachers, no priests, no talatala, and they will be teaching duavata, which is unity. No preachers, no unity, and women would be in the forefront. Okay, 3 prophecies. No preachers, teaching unity, and women in the forefront. And he had, okay, I was here in 1978, trying to find a job, and then amazing thing happened, because Apolosi, that old seer back in the 1800s, he had pointed in one child in that crowd and said, only this boy will see that day. And he said, what's your name? He says, my name is Vatonga. Vatonga lived until I met him in 1978. He was 104. Vatonga, in one day in 1978, Vatonga had a dream. He had a dream that 3 people were coming. In his dream, 1 European, one Fijian, and 1 Indian were coming in a car. He had a dream. Apolosi came in his dream and said, the day I told you about is coming now. And he said, they're coming today. And so he woke up at dawn and he was 104. I remember seeing on his wall this picture of the Queen of England had sent, Queen Elizabeth had sent her picture and signed it, happy 100th birthday, and had sent it to, everybody in the Commonwealth who turned 100, she would send a picture with her signature on it, wishing them happy birthday. So Vatonga was told by Apolosi in his dream that they were coming. And then Jerry Knight, who lives in England, I think somewhere, Gerald Knight, Ram Krishnamurti, and Johnny Salele Wangabesi were lost in their car, lost in Jerry's Land Rover, ended up at the edge of this village, and they were already waiting for them. And they said, we've been waiting for you. And they said, well, where is this place? Why are you waiting for us? They said, oh, we want you to tell us what you have. We've had this, and our oldest man has had a vision about you coming. So that whole village of Tongambula became Baha'is on that day because the prophecy. But I talked to Vatonga, and Vatonga said that this religion will be obscure in Fiji. It won't do anything. It'll just be obscure until it becomes strongly established in the Singatoka Valley. Then it will build unity between all the races, will basically come out and shine out and go all over Fiji. And so here we are in Singatoka Valley right now. We're living here in this permaculture farm. We have the most wonderful local community, local spiritual assembly of all races. And it's amazing. They're so excited. We just had our little conference. They're so excited about transforming this valley. They're so excited. and most of them came from Hindu background, some from Christian background, but they are really excited about building multicultural harmony in this valley and transforming this valley and this governance system that we have about actually shedding the unity and bounty on everybody and trying to serve the entire valley. And so let's see what happens.
Yeah.
But if any country could change its governance structure, it'll be one of these Pacific islands that can see, oh, this is working. Oh yeah, we can change, because what they have now is a parliamentary system that has people fighting, which is so against the culture here to have people fighting like that. And they're thinking, why are we doing that? Because that's democracy, but it's not democracy. It's just a perversion of democracy where people have to fight, where you decide everybody wants good schools, everybody wants good roads, everybody wants a good economy, everybody wants justice, everybody wants peace. Why do we fight about it? Let's just do it. Okay. Okay.
All right.
Sorry.
All
Thank you,
right.
Joe.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Austin. We have Holiance and then Quanta. Holiance, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for the presentation. It's almost 2 hours later and we are still all here listening and yearning to listen more to you. I'm listening from Nairobi, Kenya, and I'm really glad that I was able to attend, and you've really made a good presentation. You've talked about people establishing the system of governance, which is now all embracing, and it appears that everyone is on board, and it's showing glimpses of the administrative order that we yearn to have in the future. It's also my hope that you people figure out the new model of prosperity, because I think the problem now we have, even with climate change, was the model of prosperity that we have. It's for everyone to to own more and more, and to buy more and more. So that's what we have. But I believe a model that would serve the whole world is one where we have dignity, there's equality, and it's not going to emanate from the West, because that's already they're used to the one which is skewed with the 1% of the population owning more than 50%. So it would really be interesting to see how people start conceptualizing on what prosperity should look like, where it's all embracing, and people are living with dignity but not necessarily super wealthy. Thank you so much.
Yes, I'm so thankful that you from Africa are listening to the talk, because Africa is the future. Okay, it really is the future. Africa is huge. If you look at a proper map that's drawn properly, Africa is practically as big as Asia. It's a huge, diverse land with all kinds of resources, and you've been abused for a very long time and used. But the African people, if you look at the writings of Baha'u'llah and the writings of Shoghi and Abdul Baha, Africa is a precious place. And I think that Africa will lead, it's very clear actually, Africa is going to lead us into a new day, along with the indigenous peoples of South America and the Pacific and Asia and so forth. But Africa is the largest body, I think, of indigenous people, and that still retain their culture. They still are connected to the land, and they're like I said before, these are the meek people that will inherit this earth. No matter how bad the economic collapse becomes in the West, the Africans will still survive. They will be okay. And you guys just, seriously, I'm expecting amazing things to come out of Africa. So if I wasn't here, I'd be in Africa. Okay. Seriously. I actually applied to the University of Sierra Leone at one point. I was going to go to school at Sierra Leone, and then I got the phone call from my father to go to Fiji. So I should be in Africa now. So, but anyway, here I am. Yeah.
All right. Okay, just one
Thank
more.
Thank
Quanta?
you. Well, I only wanted to say that I want to connect Gary Rocher and Austin, and I sent them an email, a message on Facebook, because I think you guys have something in common. Maybe Gary can say just one
Thank
thing
you,
about
FICA, but
himself.
we're already, whoever it was, who said that?
Gary Rocher.
Yeah,
He's
we're
a
already
Baha'i.
actually in contact. Me and Gary talked sometime on the internet because I was so
Oh,
worried
I
about him. I wrote to
didn't
him.
know that. Okay, great. Awesome.
Yeah. And he's doing great things. I've seen, I've gone to Google Earth. I've gone to his farm. I've looked at everything on his farm. I've seen, oh yeah, he's pretty far away from the conflict. I'm really happy that he is. There's a big river there that maybe they won't go across, I hope. And so I've been studying Gary, and you know, Gary is doing a wonderful thing. And I know he's going to keep doing it as long as he can. And if he has to run away, he'll run away at the very last minute. Because he's there to serve.
All right. Right. So thank you so much, everyone. From the Agriculture Working Group for the Association for Baha'i Studies, we're so happy that you all came today. This was a wonderful presentation, and it will be posted on our YouTube channel. And if you're on our list, you'll receive an announcement, and it will be included in that list of the different videos that are posted on YouTube. So you'll see it there too. And I just want to mention, if you hadn't looked at the chat, I will put the PowerPoint. Austin had sent me the PowerPoint, and I have it in my Google Drive here for the Agriculture Working Group, and I'll just post that on our webpage, and so you can access it there. I did put in the chat the address for our webpage, or you can find it on those announcements. If you get the announcements, then you can see that the link for our webpage there. But thank you everyone so much.
What's the one for next month, Dawn? For next month?
July, we don't have anything because it's the Association for Baha'i Studies Conference. Their annual conference is at the end of the month, 29th, I think, to the 31st. And then in August, it will be Sohail Madaheda, who's going to talk about algae.
Oh, good.
I'd like to encourage everybody to sign up for the conference. It's on Zoom.
Right.
And we don't know of any agricultural presentations this time, which is sad, but you as people who care about it can put your 2 cents in if you attend these sessions. So please do sign up for the ABS conference.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Austin.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Don't forget to keep me in your thoughts.
We
Okay?
will,
Yes.
For the next 2 days,
definitely.
please.
Good luck, Austin.
Thank you.
Yeah,
We'll
Bye-bye,
pray for
everybody.
you.
so good to see you.
Bye, Austin.
Bye-bye.
Allah.